So good morning, teacher and friends. We are group 5 with 3 members, Pham, Linh, and Nguyen. And today we are going to present to you about inflation targeting. And this is our outline. First, I'm going to talk about the definition, the advantage and disadvantages. And Nhat is going to talk about the performance of inflation targeting over the last decade. And last but not least, Linh is going to discuss about the alternative strategy for inflation targeting and his overall opinion. So first, what is inflation targeting? We can easily understand that it is a public announced numerical number about the inflation rate, and it includes the institutional commitment to stabilize the price and also the commitment to follow the inflation target. And it is also an information inclusive approach to making decisions about the monetary policy. And it increased the transparency of the monetary policy by communicating with the public about the plan and the objectives that the policymaker wants to achieve. And also, it increased the accountability of the central bank for attaining the inflation target. So what are the advantages? First of all, it increased the accountability of the central bank because all of the people know about the target that they want to achieve. And it is a way to control inflation, and it will prevent the policymaker from the time consistency trap of expanding the economic growth and the employment, and it reduces the political pressure on the central bank as they have to pursue their inflation target. And one more thing, very important, is that it improves the private sector planning by educating people about what is the role of the central bank, what they can achieve and cannot achieve, and it reduces the uncertainty of the private sector because they know about their target. And it also clarifies the responsibility of the central bank about achieving their inflation target. So what are the disadvantages? First of all, it is the delay signaling. So the inflation target needs a substantial lag to see the outcome. And also, it is too much rigidity because we just keep on following the target, but in some unexpected circumstances, this cannot work. And it is a potential of increasing output fluctuation because as in Japan, they have deflation, and a lot of countries say that Japan needs to follow their inflation targeting at 2%. But if come from deflation to 2% targeting, it would be the huge gap between the output. And also, there would be a low growth in output and unemployment in employment, because like some countries like Vietnam, we are a developing countries. Like in every year we have like 5 to 7% in inflation. But if we keep the target at 2%, for example, it is not really suitable for us because our aim is to develop. And now Nhat is going to talk about the performance of the inflation targeting over the last decade.
Thank you, Linh. My name is Linh, and now I am going to tell you about the performance of inflation targeting over the last decades. So looking at this figure, it is Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Mexico, and Turkey in inflation targeting and their deviations from their target inflations and the real inflation rate. And as we can see, during the financial crisis, which is from 2007 to 2008, and also from the Great Depression 2011 to 2012, we can see that the fluctuation is huge, and these two periods have produced the inflationary pressure, and it makes the real inflation rate higher than the target that they have published. So to really evaluate whether the inflation targeting is really work and effective, we have two methods. So the first one is to compare the economic outputs of inflation targeting countries and non-inflation targeting countries. So looking at this figure, we can see that both inflation targeting and non-inflation targeting has the same result as they reduce the inflation and also they increase the growth. However, when we're looking at the low-income countries, which is the red and the blue line here, we can see that the decrease in inflation targeting countries is bigger than the decrease in non-inflation targeting countries in terms of inflation rate. And also when we look at the high-income countries, which are the orange line and green line here, we can see that the decrease in growth of inflation targeting countries is smaller than the decrease in growth of non-inflation targeting countries. So we can say that inflation targeting countries perform better. And the second method of evaluating performance of inflation targeting is to compare the result of one country before and after they apply this strategy. And we will look at the example of Poland. They adopted the inflation targeting strategy in 1998, and at that time their inflation rate is 10.6%. However, after only 2 years, they have the inflation target at 2.5% minus plus 1, and they succeed to reduce the inflation rate to 3.1%. And we can come to the conclusion that the central bank is more responsive to inflation deviation after they adopt the inflation targeting strategy. And now, I would like to introduce Ming to talk about the discussion of alternative strategies.
So good morning teachers, my name is Ming and my presentation will answer question 4 and question 5. So the first part of my presentation is discussion on alternative central bank strategy. So after searching the internet and reading books, our group has found 3 strategies that central bank can use instead of inflation targeting. So the first one is the production objective. These strategies will risk high yield corresponding to potential yield. In order to achieve this, the economy have to make full use of all resources. So it will have the economy to have a high growth rate and solid. The second one is the job objective, which will create more jobs and lower unemployment rate and maintain the natural unemployment rate. And the last one is the foreign economic objective. The target of this strategy are exchange rate stability and balance of payment. And the final part of our group presentation is overall opinion on inflation targeting. So whenever to maintain the inflation targeting for the next decade, our group think is depend on the structure of the economy. In the developed country, high inflation will lead to the growth in saving, collapse in investment, slowing domestic capital flow, slowing down the economic growth, and inability to implement national long-term plans. So the high inflation rate will lead to the political and social tension. So there are many developed countries all over the world apply the inflation targeting, and the results are very good. So as the case of Vietnam, so besides the demand to controlling the inflation rate, growth also is an important goal. So the too low inflation rate will lead to the low growth rate. So there are many issues of economic welfare in the society. So in the short term, our group thinks that Vietnam should not apply the inflation target because Vietnam is the developing country. So the very low inflation rate will create the negative impact to the economy. So, but in the medium term and long term, I would think if Vietnam can apply the inflation targeting, so we should apply the flexible inflation targeting because this will enable the economy to scope with the economic shocks and to make the timely policy change to avoid the financial crisis. So, in order to the inflation targeting strategy will be effective, Vietnam should have some condition like the central bank is independent, then accept the price stability at the sole goal of the central bank. The transparent banking system has controlled the inflation targets effectively, and the last one is the fiscal policies must be under control. So that's all about our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. I have no questions.